Oh, I feel the cold emanating off of it. I can feel, this is gonna be good for the dark circles under my eyes. It's anti-inflammatory. Today's a good day because I'm cooking steaks, and I'm not just cooking steaks, I'm cooking steaks 3 ways. Why am I cooking steaks 3 ways? Because I want to show you the pros and some of the cons of each of the 3 main methods we recommend here at Series Seats. Those are sous vide, the reverse sear, and butter basting in a pan. How do you choose among the 3 methods? Well, it really comes down to personal preference, like what are your goals with your steak? Do you want a really thick, crusty, browned, delicious crust on the outside? Or is it more important for you to get a really even gradient of doneness from the center out to the edge so that, it's like perfect medium rare all the way through and doesn't transition through a little band of grayness as it gets towards the outside? There are also kind of situational considerations, like how many people are you feeding? How many steaks do you have to cook? How busy and distracted are you going to be? Those can all factor into deciding among these 3 methods. We have different options, they offer different things, and depending on the situation, you might choose one over the other. I got some beautiful ribeye steaks here. Let's make some steaks. One thing that is great about cooking steak sous vide is it gives you such amazingly consistent results. You can nail your perfect doneness every time, whatever that is for you. The way sous vide works is we have this immersion circulator, which is a device that heats this water to a precise temperature of your choosing. When you put the steak in this hot water bath and it just hangs out in there, you can't overcook the steak. You can't cook it past medium rare because once the steak reaches whatever the temperature of the water bath is, it just stays there. That's awesome for entertaining because basically you can get your steaks going and then just let them hang out in there. You can talk to your guests, you can chat with your friends, you can have a drink. You're not worrying about whether your steak is gonna overcook. Generally, you wanna try to use a steak that's on the thicker side, at least an inch, preferably 1.5 inches or even 2 inches thick. With a thicker steak, you get this perfect doneness from the center right out to the edge with very little gradient, very little shifting towards more and more cooked until you get to the very outside where it's seared. If you love a very rare steak, then you're probably cooking in the 120 degrees Fahrenheit to about 129. From 129 to about 134, 135, you're in the medium rare zone. My hot water bath right now is at 130, so I'm aiming for kind of a low medium rare. From about 135 to 144 Fahrenheit, you're in the zone of medium, and then going above that, you're getting into medium well and eventually well done, which at that point, I don't even know why you would use sous vide because you might as well just cook the crap out of your steak in a pan. Like, it doesn't make much difference. I'll start by just seasoning my steak. Salt. All right, in goes the steak, and I'm gonna vacuum seal these steaks. And in it goes. In the water bath, at least 45 minutes or about an hour to make sure that the heat fully penetrates to the center of the steak. So, step number 1 is to simply lift the bag out of the water. And we will dry them on some paper towels because this is a method where the steaks are quite wet. You just want to sear them really hard and really fast. Get as good of a crust as you can get on them as quickly as you can to maintain that perfect interior that you spend all that time guaranteeing by cooking sous vide in the first place. So flip it. Ooh, we're gonna come over here. The meat has been brought very slowly and gently up to precisely the perfect temperature you want. There's no need to let it rest and reabsorb juices. It's ready to go. It's ready to cut as soon as it comes out of the pan. It's perfectly cooked, super tender, and it's got a decent sear on it. It's not a great sear. And yeah, could I have seared it harder? Yeah, but I would have gotten more and more of a doneness gradient, at which point you start to ask, why'd you cook it sous vide? Traditionally, we would cook a steak by throwing it into a hot pan and then maybe finishing in the oven until it reaches its final internal temperature. Reverse sear kind of flips that on its head. It sort of borrows a page from the sous vide book. The steaks go in like this into a very low oven and they very slowly come up to temperature. And only when in the center the steaks have reached your desired temperature do you take them out, and then you sear them at the end to get the nice brown flavorful crust on the outside. Why do we do this? Well, for one thing, it gives us better control and a more foolproof method than if we went from high heat right from the start. The other really great thing about the reverse sear is because these steaks are hanging out in a dry, hot oven, the surface will continue to dry out the whole time it's in there. Dryness is what you want when it comes time to sear the steak in a pan. A probe thermometer will track the temperature of your meat while it's in the oven. And I'm gonna set an alarm. 105 Fahrenheit, I'm aiming for 115, but this gives me a 10-degree head start to make sure that I don't mess up. The thing is with the reverse sear is the steaks are gonna jump a little bit more when they're out of the oven. So we wanna pull them out a little before whatever our real desired final temperature is. For rare, that means taking them out when they're about 105 Fahrenheit in the center. For medium rare, that means pulling them from the oven when they're about 115 degrees Fahrenheit in the center, and for medium, 125, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't mean medium is 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Medium is actually warmer, 130, 135, more up there. But that's gonna happen in the pan when they come out of the oven. And I've already got my cast iron pan preheating. I'm actually gonna crank the heat now. I'm gonna get a tablespoon of oil in the pan. I want this oil smoking hot. My goal here is to preserve that kind of perfect doneness in the center of the steak, so I really want to get the sear on this meat as quickly as I can. Now, these are not particularly beautiful at the moment. That's why we're gonna sear them now. In we go. Steak, butter, garlic, thyme. Swirl that around. Press it down, make sure the steak is making full contact with the pan so you don't end up with a little raised portion that didn't get brown enough. 45 seconds, a minute, really as quick as you can. Any longer and you might as well have just been butter basting in the pan the whole time because you'll start to get that doneness gradient. I'm gonna flip it, sear the edge. See that, how that's nice and brown there now? Now reverse sear doesn't really need to rest. You basically can cut into it whenever you're ready. That was really good. Method number 3 is butter basting a steak in the pan. This is my personal favorite, but that's because I'm not all that concerned with a slight band of gray meat around the outside. Yes, it's easier to mess up. It is easier to overcook your steak. Yes, you will have more of a doneness gradient than if you use a method like sous vide or the reverse sear. But man, do you get flavor in return. You get the most crunchy, crusty, roasted exterior to the meat that you can imagine. And if you do it right, it's still tender and juicy and beautiful in the center. This is a fast method where things kind of, you know, they don't happen instantaneously, but you need to be ready. You have to have everything mise en place. Mise en place, can I verbify it like that? Everything, have a nice mise en place all set up. You don't want to have to be running to your refrigerator, finding your time sprigs or anything like that once you start. As soon as the steak goes in the pan, you're on until it's out of the pan. I've got my oil to start it off, neutral oil, high smoke point. This is canola. I got my steak, got my butter that I'll add to the pan after I get the initial sear on this and then start basting it. Got my instant read thermometer to take the temp on the steak. I also have some tongs. I have a slotted offset spatula. And very importantly for butter basting, I have a nice big spoon to baste with. All right, this oil's smoking. Ready? Steak. That old cooking tip that you should not flip your meat too much is not true. The more you flip it, the more even of a doneness you'll get in the center. That's what the spatula's for. Flip it. And what we're going for here is just a nice, hard sear right at the beginning. Nice crust. So I really wanna just get this super, super, super high heat with the oil first. Get that really good sear. Then I can add the butter. I can even lower the heat a little bit. In goes the butter, in goes the thyme, in goes the garlic. Tip the pan and baste. In this butter, it's infusing now with the garlic and thyme flavor. The milk solids are browning and taking on a deeper, more complex flavor. And by doing this, I'm also cooking the steak from the top and bottom at the same time. It's kind of enveloping it in this intense, scalding hot fat. You still wanna flip that steak? Yeah, I'm gonna take this out. All right, here we go. You can see there's a little rim of gray. It's a little bit more of a gradient, but it's, to be honest, it's not that extreme. And otherwise the steak is cooked perfect medium rare, which is harder to do with this method than the other ones, which really kind of make it easier to nail the doneness. Oh, so tender. Oh my God, whoa. What you really get here is just this profound, seared, crispy crust and such good roasty flavor. So good. In conclusion, steak. I just showed you 3 ways you can cook a steak at home. And hopefully you saw that there's sort of advantages to each one. And depending on what you want, you choose which path you're going to go on. Think through all 3, think about what you want, think about the results you want, think about what your priorities are, and then pick. Damn, it's good steak too. It's really nice to have good steak.